If someone has hurt you, there is a good chance you are still carrying it, not in a way anyone else would notice, but somewhere quiet in the background of your mind, replaying what they said, what they did, what you wish you had said back. You have tried to let it go. You told yourself it doesn't matter anymore, and yet it returns, usually at night, usually when you are tired, usually when you least expect it. This video is not another list of clever comebacks or emotional armor. It is drawn from the actual teachings of the Buddhist tradition, real concepts, real practices that have helped people carry pain for thousands of years without being destroyed by it. By the end, you will not just know how to respond to the person who hurt you, you will understand how to be free of what they left behind. 1. The gift that was never accepted. There is an old teaching preserved in the early Buddhist discourses about a man who came to insult the Buddha directly. He used harsh words, mocking language, the kind meant to wound. The Buddha listened, and when the man finished, he asked him a simple question. If you bring a gift to someone and that person does not accept it, who does the gift belong to? The man answered that it would still belong to him since it was never taken. The Buddha then said that this was exactly what was happening with the insult. It had been offered but not accepted, and so it remained with the one who brought it. This teaching is quietly radical because it removes an assumption most of us carry without noticing. We assume that when someone directs anger or cruelty at us, we are obligated to receive it, to hold it, to feel it as our own. But an insult, like a gift, requires two people to complete the exchange. One person offers it. The other person has to reach out and take hold of it for it to actually land. When you meet harsh words with stillness, when you do not grab at what is being handed to you, the words simply stay with the person who spoke them. They carry the weight. You do not have to. This does not mean pretending you feel nothing or suppressing a natural human reaction. It means noticing, in the moment something painful is said or done, that there is a small space of choice. A pause between the offering and the taking. Most people move through that pause so quickly they never even notice it exists. Buddhist practice is largely about slowing down enough to see that pause clearly and choosing again and again not to reach for what is being handed to you. In daily life, this might look like a co-worker who criticizes you unfairly, a family member who says something cutting during an argument, a stranger online who leaves a cruel comment. Your instinct is to snatch the comment, turn it over in your hands, examine every word, and carry it home with you. The practice here is different. Let it be offered. Simply do not accept delivery. Not because you are weak and not because it did not hurt, but because you understand deeply that unaccepted things do not become part of you. They stay behind in the hands of the one who never let them go. 2. Watching the weather move through you. One of the oldest and most central teachings in Buddhism is the truth of impermanence, known in the Pali language as anicca. Every feeling that arises in the mind, no matter how intense, is understood in this tradition to be temporary by nature. Anger rises, anger passes. Hurt rises, hurt passes. This is true even when it does not feel true, even when a painful feeling seems to have moved in permanently and set up a home inside your chest. When someone hurts you, the mind tends to do something specific. It takes a passing emotional state and quietly renames it as a permanent identity. A single moment of anger becomes, "I am an angry person." A wave of hurt becomes, I am someone who has been broken by this. The feeling, which was only ever meant to move through you like weather moves through a valley, gets mistaken for the shape of the valley itself. The teaching of impermanence offers a different way of relating to these states. Instead of fighting the anger or trying to force yourself into calm before you are ready, you are invited simply to observe it. To notice as clearly as you can that this feeling arrived at a particular moment, is changing shape even as you feel it, and will eventually pass, the way every other feeling you have ever had has passed. Even feelings that once seemed unbearable did eventually soften. This is not a hopeful guess. It is a pattern you can verify from your own life, if you are honest about it. Practically, this means when the memory of what someone did resurfaces, you can try saying to yourself, quietly, this is a feeling passing through, not a permanent resident. You are not required to shove it away or perform forgiveness you do not yet feel. You are simply asked to remember that its nature is to shift, to loosen, to become something else over time, whether you help it along or not. Watching a feeling this way, without gripping it, without also pushing it away in fear, is one of the quiet skills at the center of Buddhist mental training. It is called mindfulness, and it works less like a cure and more like standing at a window watching weather change, knowing that no storm, however loud, stays in the sky forever. The person who hurt you is not the weather. The weather is your own mind's response, and your own mind's response, however strong right now, was never built to last forever. It only feels permanent because you have not yet watched it all the way through to its natural end. 3. Seeing the fire that is burning them. Buddhist teaching describes 3 root causes behind almost all human suffering and unskillful action. They are usually translated as greed or craving, aversion or hatred, and delusion or ignorance. Together, they are sometimes called the 3 poisons or the 3 fires, because each one, left unexamined, burns the person who carries it long before it burns anyone else. When someone hurts you, it is worth asking, calmly and without excusing their behavior, which of these fires was likely burning in them at the time. Perhaps craving, a desperate reaching for status, attention, or control that led them to step over you to get it. Perhaps aversion, an old wound of their own that they have never looked at directly, which came out sideways as cruelty toward you. Perhaps delusion, a simple failure to see clearly, an assumption about you that was never true, acted upon as though it were fact. This is not about finding excuses for harmful behavior, and it is not about pretending you were not affected. It is about understanding with clear eyes that people who cause pain are very rarely acting from a place of wisdom or peace. A person resting in genuine clarity does not typically go out of their way to wound someone else. Harm tends to come from people who are, in that moment, suffering themselves, often in ways they have never named or looked at. This understanding changes the emotional weight of what happened without minimizing it. You can hold 2 things at once. What they did was wrong, and it hurt, and also they were very likely acting from confusion, from an old fire they have never learned to tend properly. Seeing this does not mean you owe them your presence, your trust, or another chance. Boundaries are not in conflict with this teaching, but it does mean you no longer have to carry the added weight of believing their cruelty was a clear, considered judgment about your worth. Very often it was simply fire, doing what fire does when nobody has learned to put it out. Practically, when you find yourself replaying what someone did, try asking which fire seemed to be present. Not to diagnose them from a distance, and not to become their therapist, but simply to loosen the story that says this happened to you because of who you are. Often, it happened because of what was burning in them. That single shift, seeing the fire instead of only feeling the burn, is one of the most quietly freeing tools this tradition offers. 4. Sending warmth in a direction you do not want to. Among the core meditative practices in Buddhism are 4 qualities known as the Brahma-viharas, sometimes translated as the 4 immeasurables. The first and most well-known is metta, usually translated as loving kindness. Traditionally, this practice begins with directing warmth toward yourself, then toward someone you love, then toward a neutral person, and eventually, in its fullest form, toward someone who has caused you difficulty. This last stage is often the part people resist the most, and understandably so. It can feel at first like the practice is asking you to excuse what happened or to pretend warmly toward someone who does not deserve your kindness. That is a misunderstanding of what metta is actually for. The practice is not primarily a gift to the other person. It is a way of checking whether your own heart has become rigid, closed, and defended in a way that causes you ongoing suffering long after the original event has passed. Holding hostility toward someone, even someone who fully deserves criticism, keeps a certain channel in you gripped tight. Metta practiced toward a difficult person is not about approval. It is a way of testing, gently, whether you can hold even this most resistant case with some measure of openness, without that openness requiring you to reconcile, forgive on command, or let them back into your life. In practice, this can be as simple as silently offering a phrase such as, "May you be free from the suffering that leads you to hurt others. May you find clarity," directed at the person who wronged you, not from a place of superiority, but as an honest experiment in loosening your own grip. You are not required to feel loving in the moment. You are simply offering the intention, the way you might practice a difficult stretch you cannot yet fully perform. Over time, many practitioners report that this exercise does something unexpected. It does not necessarily change how they feel about the person. It changes how much space that person continues to occupy in their own mind. A heart practicing warmth, even reluctantly, tends to loosen its grip on old wounds faster than a heart practicing constant resentment. This is, in many ways, the most demanding of the 6 lessons here, and also potentially the most transformative. It asks nothing of the person who hurt you. It asks something only of you, and what it asks is not forgiveness on a deadline, but a small, repeated act of choosing not to let your own heart calcify around this one event. 5. Letting the ledger balance itself. Karma is one of the most widely known Buddhist concepts, and also one of the most frequently misunderstood outside its original context. In its traditional Buddhist sense, karma refers to intentional action, and the natural principle that intentional actions carry consequences, shaping the conditions a person will experience, whether in this life or across a longer arc of cause and effect that the tradition describes as extending beyond a single lifetime. This teaching offers something quietly powerful to a person who has been hurt. It suggests that you are not, in fact, the only force responsible for making sure the person who wronged you experiences consequences. The law of cause and effect, as understood in this tradition, does not require your intervention to function. Harmful, intentional action generates its own conditions over time. The way a seed, once planted, does not need to be watched constantly to eventually grow into what it was always going to become. This does not mean you should avoid appropriate action in your own life. If someone has wronged you seriously, seeking accountability, setting boundaries, involving others where necessary, all of this can be appropriate and is not in conflict with this teaching. What karma offers is relief from a specific and exhausting burden many people carry without realizing it. The belief that they personally must engineer the other person's suffering, must make sure they feel appropriately guilty, must somehow orchestrate justice with their own hands and their own energy. Letting go of this self-appointed role does not mean believing nothing matters or that consequences will not come. It means trusting, as this tradition teaches, that intentional harmful action tends to shape difficult conditions for the person who commits it, independent of your involvement. Your energy, instead of being spent monitoring whether they are suffering enough or engineering situations where they might feel regret, can be redirected entirely toward your own life, your own healing, your own path forward. There is also a subtler layer to this teaching worth sitting with. Every time you act from a place of genuine wisdom, patience, or integrity in response to being wronged, you are shaping your own conditions in a positive direction according to this framework, regardless of what happens to the other person. In other words, that quiet, most difficult effort to respond with clarity rather than blind reactivity is not wasted, even if the other person never faces any visible consequence at all, and even if they never apologize or change. It becomes part of your own unfolding, not contingent on theirs. Many people carry a background hope that if they wait long enough, they will get to witness the person who hurt them finally receive what they deserve. This teaching offers something different. It suggests you may never see it, may never know how their story unfolds, and that this is completely acceptable because your task was never to be the judge. Your task was only ever to tend your own actions and to trust, as this tradition trusts, that cause and effect does not need a witness to remain true. 6. The self that was never as solid as it felt. The final teaching here is also the deepest, and it concerns the Buddhist concept of anatta, often translated as non-self. This teaching proposes that what we experience as a fixed, permanent, unchanging self is, on close examination, actually a shifting collection of thoughts, sensations, memories, and reactions, none of which remain constant, and none of which can be pinned down as a solid, unchanging thing that could be called the true you. This may sound abstract, but it has an unexpectedly practical use when someone has hurt you. Consider what actually feels wounded when someone insults you or betrays your trust. Very often, on close inspection, what feels wounded is a particular idea you carry about yourself, an image, a story about who you are and what you deserve. When someone attacks that image, it can feel as devastating as a physical injury, because in the moment you have quietly fused your sense of existence with that image. The teaching of non-self invites you to loosen this fusion, not by denying that you exist, but by questioning whether the specific rigid self-image being defended so fiercely was ever as solid as it felt. If there is no single, fixed self to protect in the first place, only a flowing, changing process, then an insult or betrayal has less of a fixed target to land on. It still occurs. The words were still said, the action still happened. But the deep, almost bodily sense of a permanent self being wounded starts to soften, because you begin to see that the self under attack was always more like a river than a stone, always moving, always slightly different than it was a moment ago. This pairs closely with the practice of equanimity, known as upekkha in this tradition, the fourth of the 4 Brahmaviharas mentioned earlier. Equanimity is often misunderstood as coldness or detachment from caring, but in its proper sense, it refers to a steady, balanced presence that can hold both pleasant and painful experiences without being knocked entirely off course by either one. It is not the absence of feeling. It is the capacity to feel fully without being completely consumed. In daily practice, this might look like noticing, the next time an old memory of being hurt arises, exactly what is felt as threatened. Usually it is an image, a story, an idea of yourself as someone who should never have been treated that way, or someone who is now permanently defined by what happened. You can gently ask whether that fixed image was ever entirely accurate, or whether it too was simply a passing formation, useful in some ways, but never as solid, never as permanent as it felt in the heat of the moment. This is not an instruction to stop caring about yourself or to become indifferent to mistreatment. It is closer to an invitation to hold your own sense of self a little more lightly, so that when it is bumped, even hard, it does not shatter the way a rigid, brittle thing shatters. A self held loosely, understood as a process rather than a fortress, tends to bend under harm rather than break, and tends to return to steadiness far more quickly than a self that believes it must remain fixed and defended at all costs. If even one of these 6 teachings stayed with you today, that is enough. You do not need to master all of them at once, and you do not need to forgive anyone on any particular timeline. What this tradition offers is not a set of rules, but a set of doors, each one leading toward a little more freedom from the weight you have been carrying. If this found you at the right moment, consider staying a little longer, subscribing for more of these teachings, and sharing it with someone else who might be carrying something similar tonight. May you walk a little lighter than you did before you pressed play.